to start.
Dear colleagues and friends, good morning. Good morning. What a kick-off of the FIP World Congress on Pharmacy this Sunday and yesterday. The FIP World Congress of Pharmacy is back, and with power, commitment, and engagement. It's so fantastic, and it's also so fantastic to see all of you here today. Yesterday's plenary session discussed pharmacy as one FIP in the recovery of our healthcare systems. And pharmacists have stepped up to address some of the gaps when it comes to challenges for the healthcare systems. But we can be even more powerful resource in our public healthcare infrastructure, because healthcare now needs to its business model, operations, staffing, reimbursement, and technology to take the advantage of the pharmacy workforce resource. And doing so can actually be a win-win situation for all, for the pharmacist profession, payers, providers, and for the public. My name is Lars-Åke Söderlund, and I am one of the co-chairs of the FIP Congress Program Committee and also one of the vice presidents of FIP. It's a great pleasure for me to co-chair this session, this plenary session, with my colleague in the Congress Program Committee, Professor Michael Ward from Australia. Leaders today find themselves in an uncharted territory, never seen before in their lifetimes. The difficulty of leading in disorder comes not just from the nature of the crisis at hand, but also from the challenge of working with organizational models that were built for a scale, efficiency, stability. Often our training and our experiences constrain us from the creativity we need to improvise in a totally new set of circumstances. And leadership at all levels is under pressure to become more agile, connected, and adaptive, both in thinking and behavior. And pharmacists have stepped up to address some of these challenges during the pandemic, but they can be even more a powerful resource in our public health infrastructure. Healthcare should rethink its business model and take the advantage of the pharmacy staff. So today we are honored by having a number of highly experienced and knowledgeable speakers and panelists with us. Professor Ian Bates from the FIP Global Pharmaceutical Observatory, Dr. Caterina Fersola from the European Association of Employed Community Pharmacists, Mr. Mark Kosiol from the Pharmacists Defense Association, Dr. Catherine Duggan, the CEO of FIP, Mr. Claudius Gajewski, also from the European Association of Employed Community Pharmacists, and the President of the Military and Emergency Pharmacy Section, Sylvain Guernier from Canada. So, but before we start our session, let's go through some of the logistics. As you know, this Congress is divided in 3 themes: never waste a crisis, learnings for future preparedness, science and evidence supporting the response to COVID-19, and dealing with new and extraordinary ethical challenges. And today is sort of the humanitarian phase of Pharmacy Day, where we actually will look into how we can support our world and our healthcare systems even better. We have made a survey among our panelists and speakers, and we have the results of this evaluation. There is no conflict of interest to report for the speakers and panelists today. Please make sure that you evaluate this session, this panel, this session, because it's very important for us so we can improve it for future congresses. So please use the evaluation tool in the app. You are welcome to ask questions, and we want to interact with you during this session and in the panel debate. You can use the yes and no page in the Congress booklet to answer questions when invited, and you can also come up to the co-chairs of the session to write down your questions if you would like to do that. We kindly remind you that no recording of the session is allowed, and you may not download the speaker slides at the end of the session. However, subject to approval of speakers, slides will be available online by November in a PDF format. Please use the hashtags FIP Congress or FIP 2022 to communicate and tweet and share experiences from this session. And please turn off your mobile phones for the next 90 minutes, because this is such an important session that you should focus on what our invited speakers and panelists will tell you. And of course, when you leave the room, make sure to bring your belongings with you. So the program of the session today is that we will hear about supporting the profession to deliver universal health coverage and the lessons learned during the pandemic. The campaign from our colleagues of the European Association of Employed Community Pharmacists, Medicines to Ukraine, working with Pharmacists Without Borders, CAFOD, and Caritas to organize the initiative. The story of the initiative in Ukraine from the Pharmacists Defense Association, and then we have the panel discussion with the co-chairs and the speakers and the invited panelists, Dr. Catherine Duggan, Mr. Claudius Gajewski, and Dr. Sylvain Grenier. So the learning objectives of this plenary session is lessons learned from the pandemic. Where do we go from here to make healthcare affordable and accessible? Commentary on innovations in care delivery, including increased demand for virtual and home care accelerated by the COVID-19, and fostering a culture of health and well-being by support from pharmacy, and how to reach out to the most vulnerable patients and fight health inequities, science, education, and practice. And of course, we would like to remind you also that within a year we will meet again in Brisbane, in the beautiful city of Brisbane, where we will discuss pharmacy building a sustainable future for healthcare, aligning the goals to 2030. So prepare already now for the next year's FIP Congress. So it is now my pleasure to introduce the first speaker, Professor Ian Bates. Professor Ian Bates holds the chair of pharmacy education of the University College London School of Pharmacy as head of educational development, and is director for the International Pharmaceutical Federation Global Observatory, or Global Pharmaceutical Observatory. And he is leading a team in developing a data-driven monitoring for global development and progression. He was instrumental in authoring and launching the FIP Global Development Goals in 2021. And Professor Bates is the program director for the University College London post-registration professional programs, providing foundation and advancement training and workplace education for practitioner development. He is editor-in-chief of Pharmacy Education, an international research journal hosted by FIP, which has been publishing peer-reviewed educational research continuously since 2000. Welcome to present your findings. Thank you.
Thank you for that very kind introduction, and good morning to you all. Our main theme, or my main theme for this particular presentation, is about leadership and about how we can reshape our global pharmaceutical workforce. The COVID pandemic showed that we are a responsive profession, a profession that can step up to save lives, to improve healthcare in a very rapid way. And that was a crisis. We all know it was a crisis. In the background, we have another crisis taking place as well. We have a slower demographic crisis taking place of an increasingly aging population who need increasingly more focused care. An increasingly aging population that has increasing comorbidity and increasing reliance on complex medicines. It's a crisis that we need to tackle. We've been talking about it for a number of years, but we need to accelerate our response to that. And who knows when our next immediate crisis will occur? COVID was one, but we've had previous environmental disasters, earthquake, zones of conflict, which are still ongoing. So we do need to focus very much on our workforce and how our global workforce can be responsive. Maybe I'm pressing the wrong buttons on this device. Oh, here we go. So, we need to be prepared. And as part of that preparation, we do need to be reliant and we do need to access tools and support and longer-term strategy to reshape and continue to develop our global pharmacy workforce. So my focus for the next 10 minutes will be a summary of summaries about where we're going with workforce development globally, how policy can be helpful, but more particularly, how mechanisms and tools can be immediately accessible in order for us to be prepared. Yesterday, I was privileged to listen to Dr. Luther from WHO, who is our FIP liaison. It was a splendid and very thought-provoking presentation. And towards the end of that presentation, Luther said some important things. He said WHO has a very high priority on human resources. He said that WHO has a very high priority on competency-based education and training for our healthcare workforces. He also reminded us, and I thank him for doing this, that the pharmacy workforce is the third largest healthcare workforce. Our nursing colleagues, our doctor colleagues, and then us. We are a large and significant healthcare workforce. And WHO having a focus on human resources for health is entirely appropriate. And it's entirely appropriate to have that as a priority. There is no healthcare without a workforce. And we can't develop and progress our healthcare delivery, whether it's for a crisis like COVID, or whether it's for the longer-term demographic crisis of our aging and medicines-dependent populations. The problem is that reshaping a workforce, particularly a healthcare workforce, is a long-term issue. It's like steering a very, very large ship. You can turn the rudder on that ship. It takes a little while for that ship to change direction. So in order for FIP and for our national leadership organization members, our member organizations, to reshape a workforce, we need to start applying that steering right now. We need to be consistent and we need to be patient about maintaining our trajectory for reshaping that, the pharmacy workforce. And it's a complex thing. Most politicians, most governments tend to focus on the middle issue there, workforce size. How many doctors do you have? How many pharmacists do you have? Do we need more? Yes, we do need more. We have a global shortage of healthcare workers. Estimates range from somewhere between 15 to 18 million. Shortage, that's a lot of healthcare workers. That's a lot. But size isn't everything. It's important, but it's not everything. A sensible and intelligent workforce model also needs to address scope of practice. What is it we're doing? What is it we can do as a healthcare workforce? A sensible model for workforce development also needs to include levels of service. In other words, competency, training, continued education, development, and career pathways. And we need to have that whole mix for that model being worked on simultaneously. Not one thing after another. It needs to be done simultaneously. And that takes significant, applied, and consistent leadership in order to do that. And I do feel, and this is a personal view, I do feel that our governments and our ministries don't fully grasp the complexities of that challenge. Let's start with size. How big are we? Well, data from the Global Observatory suggests that we have a significant variance in what we call density. Measuring numbers of pharmacists, we always need to standardize that against population sizes of countries. The chart on the left there shows a very high variance in density, the number of pharmacists per population. And that's a worry. The chart on the right shows a trajectory. The good news about the chart on the right, that it's an upward trajectory. We do seem, globally, to be increasing the density, the size of the pharmaceutical workforce. A great thing, a good thing, a necessary thing. But it's not an equal growth of the pharmacy workforce. Perhaps you can't see the legend on the top right-hand corner, but the red line at the bottom is low-income countries, showing little growth, compared to the blue line at the top, which is high-income countries, showing a much more accelerated, projected growth of the pharmacy workforce. Maybe that's not a surprise, but it's certainly a worry, and it's certainly a challenge we need to address. 2030, which is the date on the bottom right-hand axis, is a target date. It's a target date for WHO, for its human resources strategy. It's also become a target date for FIP in order to get significant growth in our pharmacy workforce. And you can see that that inequity gap could well be increasing. One thing I'd like to alert you to is that we need another data point. Statistically, this model seems to work, high degree of probability that it might look like this, but we do need another data point. And the Global Observatory will be doing another significant workforce surveillance data collection exercise next year in order to get a 2022 data point to help us with our projections and to help you, member organizations, to plan your workforce development accordingly, both on a regional basis and a national basis as well. So this is just a reminder that we will be coming to see you next year to increase our projections. The second dimension of our model is about scope of practice, something which I find strangely off the agenda sometimes when we talk about national leadership. Scope of practice is critically important, and I'm constantly surprised to find that sometimes when we look, we can't find scope of practice documentation. We can't find a thorough definition of scope of practice for our pharmaceutical workforce. This is a crucial point, and having what we call competency development frameworks in place is a big step towards being able to define scope of practice. And I'm looking at our young and early career pharmacists in particular, who find transitioning into independent practice as young, inexperienced practitioners. All of us in this room, we were young once, even myself was young once, and all of us struggled in those early career years to find out what it is we really want to do or need to do, or the scope of what we should be doing. Things are developing, I'm pleased to say. More and more countries now have very defined scopes of practice, but we need to absolutely adequately ensure that we can define our roles, particularly when tackling that background crisis of the demographic changes we have. The complexity of providing medicine's expertise to complex cases, complex comorbidities, complex therapeutics needs a scope of practice. Do we need more prescribing by pharmacists? Yes, we do. Do we need more input into healthcare teams by pharmacists? Yes, we do. Do we need more integrated primary health-focused care, including medicine's expertise? Of course we do. And that needs to be simultaneously addressed, as we do with workforce capacity. And let me leave you with the final major message of this presentation. It's not more of a priority than the others, but it's today's focus, perhaps, for my colleagues who are coming up here, which is about preparing ourselves in terms of continued daily, weekly, annual progression of practitioners. And the big message is about competency-based education and training. It's about no healthcare without a workforce, and continuously pushing forward our workforces in terms of competency development, competency-based education and training, more flexibility in what we do and what we can do, and making sure that we continue as individuals, as a holistic workforce, to move forward and to progress our competencies and our applications of those competencies. For sure, and make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, CBET, competency-based education and training, is the direction of travel. To prove the point, have a look at what WHO is advising governments, national associations, professional bodies to do. And that is focus on human resources for health, to focus on investment in our workforce. Is a common misconception that our workforces are a cost burden to health systems. They are not. They are an investment in health. Investing in the workforce is an investment in health. And many economists have produced evidence to show that investing in health workforce makes country-level GDP improve. There is direct links between the wealth of nations and investment in healthcare. It's not a cost, it's an investment. And that investment is linked with competency-based development of that workforce. This document you see here on this slide has just been launched by WHO. It's 2 months old, and it's a global framework to assist professions, to assist leadership bodies in designing, developing competency-based approaches towards universal health coverage, UHC. It covers competency-based development of assistants, healthcare assistants, pharmacy assistants, technicians, a vital component of our workforces, through to community healthcare workers, through to the regulated professions themselves. It's an immensely important document to help guide us. I'm very pleased to say FIP had a vital role in preparing and inputting into this document, and we were seen as a critical profession in designing these global solutions to health workforce development. Here is some of the evidence that went into it: an immense amount of work, an evaluation of over 300 development outcomes frameworks for the health workforce. You can see pharmacists there, I've highlighted on the right-hand side. A huge piece of work which we need to take notice of. FIP, and in collaboration with our member organizations, will be translating this document into what it means for us. And we've already started this work. We were ahead of the wavefront. We've been ahead of the wavefront for some time now, and we need to maintain this momentum. Our global competency framework for early career pharmacists has proven to be a vital and useful support tool for our young and early career pharmacists, and remarkably consistent across nations. The transnational applicability is remarkable. It really is. The evidence behind our other pillar of support, the Advanced Development Framework, is also irrefutable now. It's not just about your expert practice. It's not just about any specializations you're doing, your medicine's expertise. It's about how you manage that. It's about how you lead teams in communities, primary healthcare environments, in hospital environments. It's about how you provide evidence-led service development. It's about how you mentor, train, and educate your juniors, your students who are coming through. Advanced practice is a complex career set of competencies. And this particular framework has an example there from Indonesia that we've been working on for a couple of years now, where we can actually identify stages of development, we can actually identify the shape of the pharmacy workforce and provide development solutions for it. I'd like to do this work in many other countries. We already have worked with many. I'd like to work with many more on this. This year alone, we've launched, with the help of Dr. Grania and our MEPS, the Military and Emergency Pharmacy Section, an enormously significant workforce development framework for humanitarian emergencies. An astonishing piece of work, for which I congratulate MEPS in their leadership on this. And only yesterday, FIP launched another framework to support people who want to be trainers and mentors and educators, not just in academia, but where it's also needed in primary care environments, in hospital environments, okay? The universities can't be everywhere. We need to have a profession which is embedded with education and training for ourselves, wherever we are, in whatever environment we happen to be. We have more coming along. We have our handbooks coming along, our guidelines, and an increasing focus on our support workforce as well. And I'm hoping that these new initiatives will be launched within the next 6 to 12 months, and FIP will continue on its mission for workforce development and leadership, global leadership in workforce development, and providing accessible and useful mechanisms, tools, frameworks to help us address these, the health crisis that we have worldwide. I may very nearly be done, you'll be pleased to hear. The message for you to take away today, in terms of leadership and being prepared for whatever is coming our way, is to focus on the approach of competency-based education and training in all that we do, and that includes undergraduate education as well. It is to continue to support our medical colleagues and our nursing colleagues. It is to continue to inform and lead with WHO, OECD, and other major global agencies. And it's to continue to focus on the challenges of Astana, the Astana Declaration, which we have committed to, don't forget. We have globally and very publicly committed to improving access to healthcare, universal healthcare, to a primary care focus, to an integrated way that we use our hospitals and our primary care environments to address the health challenges that pharmacy needs to be in the middle of. The chart on the right shows that we are on the right trajectory. This is the increase in evidence, publications about competency-based education and training for pharmacy. And that is an astonishing trajectory, I have to say. Okay? Here we go, the last slide. CBET is useful, it's pragmatic, it works, it moves us forward quickly. We need to grow further, and we certainly need to collectively support all of our members, all of our organizations, particularly in low and middle income countries, to accelerate growth and the trajectory of competency for our new challenges. Primary healthcare delivery is still key, it will be key, with support from our acute and secondary care sectors, our hospital sectors, but it will be key. Astana is a driver, and it will continue to be a driver. Evidence-led competency frameworks work. The evidence is irrefutable. They work. Embrace them, use them, don't reinvent them. There's plenty out there that can be adopted and adapted. That was our philosophy, which WHO now endorses and uses itself. Adopt things, adapt things, move on more quickly with things. No need to reinvent. 2030 will be here soon. 2030 will be here soon. We need to get a move on. That's my message. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Bates, for that excellent presentation. It's now my privilege to introduce our next two speakers in this morning's session. The first is Dr. Caterina Ferrer-Sola, who is currently President of the European Association of Employed Community Pharmacists. She's an executive board member of the Pharmaceutical Society of Croatia and has received the Anton Karlovac Award for significantly improved pharmaceutical profession in Croatia. She will be joined by Mark Koziol, who has a long history of providing or addressing needs within the pharmacy profession, having established the PPLS locum agency operating in 8 different countries and having created the Pharmacists Defence Association following his experience with the Royal Pharmaceutical Society and the peppermint water compounding case. Together, they will share with us the story of the initiative of Medicines for Ukraine, working with Pharmacists Without Borders. They will explain to us the story of the initiative in their presentation. So I welcome Caterina and Mark to share with us now. Thank you.
Thank you, dear colleagues. Good morning to everybody, and thank you for coming this morning to this plenary session. Thank you for introduction, and we now tell you our story, what we are doing, and how we are doing. So, first of all, I want to declare that we don't have conflict of interests. First, I would like, as president of our European Association, introduce who we are. We are the first European-wide organization who represents the interest of employed community pharmacists. We connect pharmacy representative organizations across Europe and represent the professional, strategic, legal, social, political and cultural interests of employed pharmacists in Europe. What is our main objective? We need to bring together pharmacy employees to solve the problems in everyday work practice, promoting the role of pharmacists, of course, and all in interest of public health, and analyzing and comparing the pharmacy work levels, not just pharmacy work levels and pharmacy education, additional pharmaceutical services, and etc. And I'm proud to say that some of our researches are published. Here on the picture you will is our executive board, some of them here sitting with us, and I would like to thank them all because these people, all the story is happening. So, today's session have title Leadership in Crisis. We heard in the introduction that leaders face some new things we never faced before. So we ask ourselves, what is our responsibility? What is our responsibility when we are in the COVID-19 pandemic? And we need to change a lot and change very quickly. And we are very adaptable and we change. We change in a good way. So during the pandemic and awful times when we are locked down, we faced the war in Ukraine. It was very stressful for us because it's in our neighbor. So we ask ourselves as an association, what is our responsibility? Our responsibility is to answer for help. Our colleagues from Ukraine ask for help. Our colleagues from Ukraine are members of our association. And we are a regional organization who is on the European level, so our responsibility is to act. So whatever we can do to help could be replicated across several countries within country are members. So, but how we did decide what to do? We use simple 7 essential skills from education on crisis. When we first, of course, we need to be situational awareness. We need to be aware what we are facing. We're gathering and assembling the key facts. And of course, we need to improvise because we never faced the situation before, and we are using newfound situational awareness and formulate a new approach. Of course, we need to be creative and adaptable, and we consult the frontline experts who know what's happening. And now, executive board of our association make a decision and we act. We prepare clear documentation, we have communicate with, of course, social media, which is very important. With our website we create, and I think this way of communication is most important in front of international colleagues. So thank you FIP for inviting us to share our story. And in the end, we always reevaluate what we are doing and how we are doing. So what's the real story behind this circle? Behind that 7 essential skills, the real story just begins. I would call to Mark to share with us a story because he is a pharmacist who was on the front line.
Well, good morning, colleagues. My name is Mark Koziol from the Pharmacists Defence Association in the UK. I'm a pharmacist. I'm very proud to be a pharmacist, and I'm very proud to be amongst all pharmacist colleagues from all around the world. I'm thrilled, in fact, that we've been able to be invited to present our work of what we've hoped to achieve in Ukraine. I want to take us all on a brief journey this morning, because this happens to be about Ukraine, but it could actually be about any crisis in the world. There has been a more recent crisis in Pakistan. There are earthquakes in different parts of the world. And I want you to have a think about some of the things that we talk about this morning being applied, those principles, to any kind of crisis and how pharmacy could respond to that crisis. So that's the journey that I want to take you on this morning. I think we have an important journey. It is a shocking journey, but it also is a very humbling and surprising journey that I'm hoping to share with you this morning. So you don't need to be a rocket scientist to work out what the situation might look like in Ukraine. When we were asked by our colleagues, pharmacists from Ukraine, to help, we contacted the Polish government and the Ukrainian government and also sources on the ground to find out what's going on. We were also watching TV channels every evening. And what was very interesting was that whilst Ukraine had a particular stockpile of medicines to treat certain conditions, when the war started to get very, very large scale, they started to run out of those medicines, medicated dressings, specialist antibiotics, the kind of medicines that you would use in a wartime crisis. So there were shortages of medicines. The whole world responded very, very quickly in all of our countries. In the UK, where I'm from, there were enormous levels of support from the public, and the Disasters Emergency Committee managed in one evening, the day after the invasion, to raise £120 million. And then the government added another £25 million on top of that. From the conversations that I've had with the charity organisations, this was a record-breaking appeal, and I believe the same was the case all around the world. Individual members of the public also were desperate to respond. So how did they respond? They decided to send boxes to the Polish-Ukrainian border. In our conversations that we had with the Polish government, they said, look, if there's one message that we want you guys to give, it's to tell the public to stop sending boxes. These boxes contained clothes, they contained tents, they contained food like sandwiches, they contained medicines, they contained everything. In the end, they had so many boxes, there was an epidemic on the border. They were in tents, they were in warehouses, they were in ditches, they were under plastic sheeting. And in the end, the government just couldn't work out how it could handle those boxes. We went to take some pictures. This was the scene that you would see. Now, can you imagine medicines being transported in this way? And can you, for one moment, as pharmacists, understand why you just can't use those medicines transported in that way? People were sending them by courier, in cars, in lorries, in vans. On the right-hand side of that picture is a field pharmacy near the front line. It's now in a theatre because the hospital has been destroyed. There were all more organised events as well. We got one story from a Ukrainian health ministry where a very large lorry with medicines that had travelled from one of the Western countries arrived in a hospital in Ukraine. And the lorry driver said, can somebody sign for this delivery? Well, they got the pharmacist out to say, what's this? And he said, well, this is medicines. And the pharmacist said, well, where are these medicines from? He said, I don't know. Can you just sign because I'm the lorry driver? Well, the pharmacist couldn't accept those medicines into stock. Can you imagine us supplying medicines like that to the public? We don't know how they've travelled, we don't know under what conditions, we don't know their origins. Unfortunately, those medicines, though they were heartfelt gifts from somebody, ended up under sheeting in a car park. They simply couldn't be used. Why? Well, we know, our expertise tells us, hospitals can only use quality-assured medicines. We know that medicines can only be delivered under optimum conditions. You can't have a transport that's moving chickens in the morning, transporting medicines in the afternoon. This is all part of the quality systems process, the cold chain, as we know it, that we as pharmacists know and understand, under fully regulated systems where we know we've protected the patients from falsified medicines, everything is properly accounted for, and everything is properly delivered. So once we did a situation analysis, we figured out that our campaign objective should be actually very simple. At the top of everything was the humanitarian cause. We wanted to help people that were seriously in need of medicine. So that was our number one objective. But I think in the slide that was prepared earlier, never waste a crisis, this was a crisis that we could use for other beneficial purposes. So we wanted to educate the public to stop sending boxes and to send money instead to pharmacy. Why? To allow pharmacy expertise to be used to purchase the hospital medicines that are desperately needed. While we were running this campaign, we were going to try and educate the public all about the nature of medicines, they are not normal items of commerce, and also about the expertise of pharmacy. We needed to raise very, very substantial funds because the kind of medicines we were buying was not paracetamol. This was specialist antibiotics, wound dressings, infusion bags, some of the most sophisticated pain-killing agents, very, very expensive indeed. We knew that we needed to raise a lot of funds. So what did we have? We knew that the public was very, very interested. We knew that there were many, many thousands and thousands of community pharmacies right across our area, which was the continent of Europe. We knew that we had several countries available, so we could do an extensive campaign, and we had some expertise within the group. I was fortunate, coming from the PDA, we have 70 staff, we have a design department, we have an IT department, we have lawyers. And in particular, in Poland, a union in Poland called ZZPF, of which Klaudiusz Gajewski is the treasurer, he has 20 years of expertise in wholesaling and procurement. And he happened to be right on the border between Poland and Ukraine, which was really very fortunate indeed. So we had all of those things going for us. So we decided to design a campaign poster that we would be using in pharmacy windows. This is the initial impression. It's been designed to make sure that the person that's running for the train station in the morning, as they run past the pharmacy window, at a glance they can see what this is all about. It's about pharmacists having a role in organising the medicine supply to Ukraine. If anybody was in any doubt or had a moment to read, it was about sending hospital medicines to Ukraine. It was about pharmacist volunteers working to deliver this, but it was an appeal to the public to give us their funds. They were able to give us their funds by clicking on the QR code, which took them to a bank account that they could pay money into. And then finally, at the bottom of that, there is a descriptor that shows this is not a national campaign, this is a truly international campaign. So there is structure, there is order, there is professionalism, and there is confidence. And those were important facets of this campaign. It is a poster that can instantaneously be translated and is now being displayed in pharmacies across Europe in different countries. When they click on the QR code, it takes them to a website. I can't go to navigate the website from the podium, but the bottom line is it tells the story of the boxes. Don't send boxes, send the cash. It tells the story that there are some real shortages of medicine, specialist medicines in hospitals. It tells the story of how pharmacists can solve this problem, that we have the expertise, we have the knowledge, and we understand how to transfer and procure medicines. And then finally, it tells the story of how we're working with both the Polish and the Ukrainian governments to organise safe and proper transport across the border. If you look in the top left-hand corner of that post of that website, you see it's in 7 different languages. So if you click the QR code in Norway, it tells the story in Norwegian. So this is our opportunity for people to be driven to help the Ukrainian humanitarian crisis, but as they go, they learn about the issues around medicines and the issues around what pharmacists can offer. We knew that we wanted to centralise the funding. So all the money from all of the different countries and all of the different campaigns would go to Poland near the border, which would enable us to organise the procurement. Now that's not the same as saying we buy all the medicines in Poland, because some of these things that we're getting, like blood products, for example, are manufactured in Switzerland. Some of the other products are manufactured in different countries. But the expertise to make those decisions is in Poland, and that's how the procurement exercise works. So we centralise the funding. Very, very important principle. Under no circumstances whatsoever did we want pharmacy to handle any money here. We've all seen in our own countries how somebody started off a fantastic charitable campaign which went horribly wrong. Why did it go horribly wrong? Because it became very, very famous, lots of people knew about it, and then somebody in the newspaper asked the question 6 months later, what happened to the money? And suddenly there isn't an accounting procedure, or there aren't proper records, or there aren't satisfactory records. So we did not want to expose pharmacy to that, so we decided that we were going to team up with a charity. The charity that we teamed up with was a very well-known charity in Poland called Caritas, and they agreed to do our Just Giving page, but we had to get them to sign a written legal agreement because the last thing we wanted to do was to collect the money and then Caritas decide they were going to spend it on something else. So we've got memorandums of understanding signed legally with that charity to make sure that the money that they receive is spent on exactly what we tell them and where we need to procure the medicines from. But here's the interesting part of it. If you're in Norway or in the UK and you go to this place and you see this, you're a little bit puzzled because it's in Polish. Not only that, the culture in Poland is that if you transfer money, you transfer it by bank transfer. Well, in the UK, you pay by Visa and MasterCard. In Norway, you pay by VIPs on the telephone. So we realised, and we're learning lessons as we're going, so we're going through that 7 learning principle cycle. We needed a charity in each country. So every single one of our FU members had to find a local charity, had to get them to sign a written legal agreement because the language and the culture was different. But what we discovered, and this is a journey of discovery, was that the taxation laws are different. If I put £100 from UK into the Polish charity, I've put £100 in. If I do the same in the UK, the government adds an extra £25. It's called gift aid. It comes from the taxation system. And a similar system exists right across the continent, although different percentages apply. So it was really important that we collected the money in the countries, different countries, and sent them all through to one central location. But most importantly, we dealt with all of those charities because we had to protect the reputation of pharmacy. That was an important part of it. So what else did we learn? Caritas, our charity in Poland, it's a Catholic charity. 98% of people in Poland happen to be Catholics. They have lots of churches. Their role was to receive the funds, paying for the medicines. Because they are located very closely to the border, it transpired that they do 2 or 3 journeys every week transferring items into Ukraine. So they came with transportation routes, security, diplomatic channels, all of these added value benefits that would have been hard for us to get. And then guess what they said to us? We thought we were the junior partner going to see them to say, is there any chance that you could do us a payment page? Do you know what they said to us? We are deeply honoured to have been approached by a group of healthcare professionals. We're delighted to support your campaign. I don't suppose you would mind very much. We know you want to put these posters into pharmacy windows, but can we put those posters into our churches as well? Well, guess what we said? In fact, we said, yes, please. So we happened to be travelling along Klaudia in Poland. We stopped off in one little town, and there was a church, and there was one of our posters in the church notice board. The message about pharmacists, about medicines, about procurement, all of those messages going to far more people. What about the other European charities? When we spoke to them about opening the Just Giving page, do you know what the CAFOD charity said to me in the UK? They said, we've just written a report because we wanted to do medicines for a long time, but the report said, we don't have the expertise. It's a highly regulated area. It's really complex. Don't touch it. We shouldn't deal with it. But you guys sound as if you know what you're talking about because you're pharmacists. And then guess what they said? Can we ask you to use our funds in your campaign? So guess what we said? In fact, we said yes 3 times. We've had 6-figure sums given to us. We never anticipated that this would happen because they recognise the expertise that we pharmacists have got. Sometimes others out there recognise the expertise that we've got in a way that we sometimes don't because we live in it and we take it for granted. So then we went to visit Ukraine. We were told by lots of our colleagues, we were told by even our families and friends, you shouldn't be going there, it's not safe. But we said we had to go. We decided to go on principle, Claudius and I, because we felt it was going to be important to the project. We didn't realise just how important that visit to Ukraine was going to be. We only went for a couple of days. I can tell you, I came back as somebody that normally works in an office, going to a wartime zone, as a changed person. The things that I saw, I will not be able to unsee. So it did deeply affect me. We had our mobile phones taken off us, our computers taken off us because we were briefed by security. It wasn't safe to use Western mobile phones over there. When we were approaching the border, we were travelling through diplomatic channels. There was a 20-mile queue of those lorries at the border trying to get into Ukraine. We went through because we had the diplomatic clearance. Images of war were everywhere. Posters, President Zelensky exhorting the population to come to the defence of the people. Martial law. The lights were out at 10 o'clock. We visited one place, it was a hospital for children, and we spoke to the clinicians there, and they were absolutely determined to take us up on the wards. We didn't particularly want to go, but we went. The things that I saw on those wards, I don't really want to describe, but in one particular case, it just looked like a little bundle of rags, but it was a child whose parents had been blown up, and this child was just held together with micropore tape. And then the clinicians said, if we can save this child's life, we're going to have to tell him that he doesn't have any parents anymore. Those are the kind of things that you will never forget. And I'm sure many of you in this audience have been to a lot worse situations like that. But these things are stick in your mind for the rest of your life. But what did we see? What did we really learn when we went there? Security preparations are extremely important. Do you know that when we went about this campaign and we approached the Ukrainian government, they wouldn't talk to us first because they wanted our passports, our driving licenses, and our dates of birth. And we said, we're the good guys, we're trying to help you. They said, we need to check you, we need to vet you, we need to understand who you are, because there are a lot of wise guys running around wanting to help Ukraine, but it turns out that they're not helping Ukraine in the end. So we had to be checked and vetted. The security detail that the Ukrainians gave us was extremely important. It enabled us to get through the border. The customs officials knew we were going. They were desperate for this to be a successful mission because we took about 200,000 euros worth of medicines through on the first transit. They had arranged visits with local officials, and that picture in the bottom right-hand corner is the senior clinical staff in one of the hospitals that we visited. And I witnessed something very unusual there. When we got into the room, their arms were crossed and their knees were crossed, and the body language wasn't very good. And I was trying to work out what's going on because we were there to help. The moment they understood that we were pharmacists, we actually started to have a conversation about antimicrobial resistance. The body language changed enormously, and they were absolutely delighted to be talking to pharmacists. Here is something else that we take for granted. Our skills and our clinical knowledge is highly valued wherever it is that we go, and I noticed it very much so on that day. The delivery had to be supervised, so in the top right-hand corner you can see a picture where we were in the initial warehouse. That's just some of the items that we took. We had to make sure that they actually arrived to the right destination point. And that picture in the bottom left-hand corner just shows you the extent that you have to go to make this work. It wasn't just Claudius and I going there. We had 3 security officials that the Ukrainians gave us. The Poles gave us 3 security ex-army people, just in case there was any trouble. And we took a film crew with us and a humanitarian expert. All of these things were necessary in our first trip over there to make this successful. And it came very noticeably useful when we were filming in the street and all of a sudden these 2 black cars stopped. Lots of people jumped out and said, "What are you doing filming? There's martial law, you're not allowed to film." And our security detail from the anti-corruption ministry were able to talk to them quietly by the tree, told them what they were doing, and they left us alone and they let us carry on filming. It just goes to show you the extent that you have to prepare to make sure that this works properly. They even went to the extent where they had the TV stations prepared. Now I'm going to show you 2 very, very brief excerpts that we've truncated. These are national news channel TV programmes.
Були усі необхідні ліки. Закордонні фармацевти та благодійники об'єдналися і створили ініціативу із забезпечення медикаментами. Нині вони відвідали Львівську дитячу лікарню Святого Миколая, що на вулиці Орлика. Обговорили з працівниками, чого зараз бракує найбільше у медзакладі. Згодом препарати закуплять за кордоном та передадуть на місця.
So this one is a Polish one, the last one was a Ukrainian one. This one hasn't got subtitles, but we had these news films going on in different parts of Europe. And as you can see, images of medicines, the skills of pharmacists, what pharmacists can do, how pharmacists are working to help in the crisis, and appealing to people not to send boxes, because if you send boxes of medicines, you end up with complete chaos. So these were the messages that we were able to get through on the news channels. Now my question, ladies and gentlemen, is when was it the last time that pharmacy appeared on prime time television with those key messages advocating what our profession does, what we do as pharmacists, and how we can provide benefits in healthcare and in this situation, in a humanitarian crisis? So what have we learned? Very important to make sure that you've got the border sorted out and the anti-corruption officials have to be there. The push system is not welcome. That bottom right-hand meeting is a meeting with the Ministry of Health officials and the military hospital officials. And they said to us that they were very grateful for the help from the West, but some of the help was not useful at all. That corridor that you see there, I'm walking down, it was a picture of boxes and boxes and boxes of ventilators. It happened to be a military hospital. And I asked the medical director, have these soldiers got a problem with breathing or what's happening? He says, no, one of the countries sent their leftover ventilators from the COVID crisis. We won't use them, we don't need them, but that's the kind of help we got. These 2 ministry officials were explaining to me that the UK managed to send, and I can say that because I'm from the UK, managed to send 2 of the largest lorries they've ever seen in their lives full of paracetamol with 2 weeks dated supply on them. They didn't need them, they didn't want them, now they've got to figure out how to destroy them. If you do an internet search, I've taken the name of the country out from that newspaper, but some countries are guilty of greenwashing the help that they're giving. Our campaign was very different. It's not a push campaign. We wait for the hospitals to tell us exactly what they need, and they send, and then we procure what it is. The officials told us something else. Whatever you do, don't do single hospital arrangements. Where you know a pharmacist called Witold, who works in a hospital somewhere, and all the medicines go to Witold in that hospital. That actually is part of the problem. It's not part of the solution, because it doesn't allow the organisations to organise the humanitarian care where it is exactly needed. They told us about many challenges in the Western and Eastern areas, not enough time to talk about just now, but I can't underestimate the importance of visiting the situation, because the lessons that we learned were extremely important. So, what makes this work? A regional network of pharmacy organisations, legal agreements to make sure that we have governance and that we protect the reputation of pharmacy, a single powerful poster campaign design and a website that can support the whole process. And I want you guys to start thinking about crises in other parts of the world. These are the principles that we say you will consider adopting. Partnerships with charities are absolutely vital. It means that pharmacy doesn't ever touch the money, but the charities can provide added value benefits. Transferring all of the funds to a central location gives you buying power. Pharmacist expertise, above all, is the thing that will make this thing work, and this is the big opportunity that we have. So what else have we learned? We thought that most of the money would come from posters from the members of the public. It took us 2.5, nearly 3 months to launch this campaign, and by the time we launched it, the interest of the public had started to wane. Nevertheless, we've still got collections and contributions made across the whole continent. But what we learned was that it was the small charities, the institutions, the pharmacy organisations that are actually giving us the money, and the larger charities are giving us far more money, and we're now starting to talk to governments about making contributions as well. The other opportunity then is the publicity for pharmacy, because not only we were extensively on prime-time news channels, but we're actually producing a television film, a documentary, which we will produce in lots of different languages, which we already know those countries will be very interested in putting on their televisions because it's an interesting story in the languages. It's all about the humanitarian crisis, but pharmacy is embedded very strongly within that. Raising the public profile. When members of the public leave money, they can put a comment on the Just Giving page. Those of us who are running pharmacy organisations might want to read some of these things. Keep up the amazing work. I am in awe of what you pharmacists are doing. Now, we run the PDA in the UK, so we're a pharmacy organisation, and somebody there said, as a member of the PDA, I am proud to support this initiative. These are very, very useful added value processes. And finally, access to the government. In that picture, you see the PDA team. We've got Natalia, who's here. She's our refugee from Ukraine who's helping us with the scheme. And that is a member of Parliament from Wales. While Claudius and I were in Ukraine, our team went to the Welsh Parliament. There are 65 members of Parliament in Wales. That afternoon, 32 members of Parliament came to see us, to talk to us about what we were doing. Some of them said, we didn't know that pharmacists did this. We didn't know that there were all these complications with medicines. Our lobbyist that we took with us told us later we could have spent £100,000 in 2 years trying to build those connections, which we managed to do in one afternoon. And had it not been for the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth last week, we would have been in Westminster last week, but we're going in 2 weeks' time, and we're doing Scottish Parliament as well. All of this goes to show that pharmacy can deliver leadership in the important area of medicines in a crisis. So, finally, this happened to be FU. We say this could be FIP. This could be a crisis somewhere else in the world. Those core structures, those foundation stones could be used because you need an organisation in the centre to do some of the initial design work, coordination and website work, and then you need regional countries, they could be members of FIP, to put the key in the engine and turn the key. Find a charity partner, get them to sign a legal agreement, distribute the posters and go to work. And in that way, we create the win-win for everybody. So our final slide, clearly I would be mad not to come here and ask you to contribute to this campaign. If any of you feel generous enough to go to that website and donate, if every person that was coming to FIP Congress paid even €10, that would be €50,000. That would be an awful lot of blood products that we could send. But actually, imagine this poster is in Japanese. Imagine it's displayed in South America. Imagine it's displayed somewhere else in Japan, for example. This campaign, we say, could go international, the Ukraine campaign, and we invite countries to join us so that we can join you into the campaign so that you can get involved in everything that we're doing. But finally, more strategically, we offer to work with FIP to share all of our systems and processes because we believe that if that were to happen, it would absolutely enable international pharmacy to lead the world in times of crisis in relation to medicines. So thank you for indulging me for the last half an hour, and we hope to be able to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Catherine and Mark, for explaining the campaign and also the story of this initiative in Ukraine. A fantastic initiative that actually can be shared and used in many countries. And also you highlighted so many valuable learnings and lessons learned from this campaign that we need to reflect over when we try to be a resource in fighting crises in different parts of the world. I think it's a fantastic story of the humanitarian phase of pharmacy. We can all be extremely proud of being pharmacists in these situations and the leadership you have shown in this campaign. Thank you so very much. It is now my great pleasure to welcome our CEO, Dr. Catherine Duggan, to the stage.
Well, while I need no introduction, because obviously I'm well known to FIP, I think the work that's been presented here today stands shoulders and heads above many initiatives we've seen from other professions, may I say. Maybe I'm being contentious. But I want to also just mention, before I go on to present our pandemic preparedness work, whilst we focus on Ukraine in the here and now, as Mark said, this is not only about that crisis, although it is in our minds. This is a potential for the profession to roll a model out to new and emerging crises, as well as to supporting existing long-term crises. Remember the motto: if we align with the UN, we leave nobody behind. And what we want is universal pharmacy coverage. Now, about May, June last year, 2021, WHO started to think about how would we prepare for the next pandemic. Frankly, on an individual basis, last May, that felt very stressful. We were still in the midst of the crisis itself, and some would say the pandemic goes on and the crises keep coming. We were asked as FIP to start planning for the next pandemic. And we thought, before we plan, let's learn. So we have taken the strategy to build a learning digest of each 100 days since the pandemic was announced as a virus of concern, end of January 2020. 100 days, 200 days, all the way through to 1,000 days, which will be on the 4th anniversary of the Astana Declaration this October. We will have a 1,000-day story which tells you how FIP has responded, what we did in the first 100 versus the 5th 100. Then we want to gather evidence from you, or we want to help you present this to your members, to your professionals. What did you do along that journey? Only by understanding what we did in the first 100 days can we understand what we need for the first 100 days of the next pandemic. Please God, this will be in 100 years. We have stories of this. We are presenting this on the booth a little later. And additionally, we are aiming to develop 2 reports. Colleagues, WHO works with the governments in different countries. We, through our agreement with WHO, we work with you in the different countries to get the voice and the experience of pharmacy across. We do not want to rush to the next crisis. We want to sit and learn for a while. Because if there's one thing I can say to you all, during the pandemic, our profession's light shone bright. If you were in academia, in industry, if you were a pharmaceutical scientist, what would we do without pharmaceutical scientists? If you were in military and emergency pharmacy, if you were in clinical biology pharmacy, if you were in hospital, I'm going to leave someone out and I'm going to get really into trouble. But actually, probably most visibly, probably most accessibly, it was our community colleagues who remained open when all other places on our high streets shut. This is a testament, colleagues, but you are tired and you are frazzled, and we need to support you. So we want to shine a light on what you've done well before we tell you what you do next time. And for a moment in our lives, for those of us who have gone through the pandemic but have not suffered with existing crises, conflicts, wars, or, to name one, the blast in Beirut 2 years ago, or, to name another, the war in Ukraine right now. We need to support each other. We need to stand shoulder to shoulder. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Catherine. Indeed, FIP is responding to crises all over the world. I would also now like to welcome Dr. Sylvain Grenier from the Military and Emergency Pharmacy section to the stage and join the panel. So what we can see, there is a profound need for a new model of acting in crisis. And FIP, as Catherine explained, responded, and is outlining very valuable information for us to collaborate in the future. And I think also that humanitarian actors need to be closer, more engaged, and more working in a more collective way and collaborate. But if I ask the first question to you, Catherine, we are doing a lot, but can we do more? And if so, in what way and with whom?
So, Lars, we have been maybe criticised for not focusing or prioritising on a few key strategic areas as FIP. But the answer is, FIP needs to provide a space and the opportunity to do as much as we can. We can't do everything alone, but we can do more in partnership. In fact, I would say it's only in partnership that we will be able to support pharmacists and our communities and our patients and public by creating more and more alliances. I mean, I leave it to Sylvain to talk about the partnerships he has forged through the military and emergency pharmacy section. But it's only through this we can get our profession's profile high and that we can deliver it. As Ian mentioned at the beginning, alignment with WHO and UN means they know more about pharmacy. But alignment with other agencies and other supporters or other initiatives mean we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I say, Lars, we can do more, but we can't do it alone.
Exactly. Thank you so very much. Sylvain, you have listened to these fantastic presentations. What is your reflection?
Well, what I would say with this is, well, thanks, Mark, for providing your hands-on experience that you presented there. These challenges that have been presented this morning have been common for many, many years. Like one of the example provided there, the push system of sending medication to countries that need them has always been a challenge. Most people that do it, the organization that do it with a good heart, but it ends up being an additional problem at the receiving end because those products can't be used, and as Mark mentioned, then it becomes a burden to try to destroy those medications. So I think what was highlighted this morning is, as Catherine said, it's a partnership. There are many players involved, many small NGOs, the military may be helping, the government may be helping, but that coordination, that communication is key to make sure that all of this can be working. And I think a big portion of it is also education. People need to understand what the true needs are so that they can actually help the right ways rather than try to help the wrong ways and making things worse.
Excellent. We would now like to open up the panel for questions from the audience. So if there are any questions, please make yourself known.
Perhaps we need some light so we can see. Yeah, there's a microphone coming.
Jorge Slotke from Argentina. Thank you very much, first of all, for the good presentation. It's just a comment. A few years ago, we had a huge problem about fire in my province, and with Pharmacy Without Borders, we fight against it. And what we found was something pretty similar what you see in Ukraine, doctor. People start taking or sending medicines very unrationality to the fire station, and it generates a waste of time, a waste of space, and a huge waste of money too. And with the Pharmacists Without Borders, what we did was we gathered there, we tried to organize all the medicines. It was like too many boxes in a room, almost to the covering all the room. And it was almost 16,000 units received, and 60% has to be wasted and go to the trash. So our job there, we try to show to community then, and we are working in a paper now, that the best way is to doing some donation in money, and then the pharmacist has to encourage people saying, okay, with the money we are going to take care of the real needs, and we are going to take high quality donations for according to the needs. But sometimes people think that, okay, I have to help, but sometimes that help is not useful. And the majority of the times when it happens, more not always means better. So just that comment. Thank you very much.
Marwan, we have another question here.
Thank you very much for the presentations, and and Ian, very much about your presentation too, but I will focus a bit on the humanitarian part. Well, thank you very much, and it's impressive the way you're acting, and it's great that and pharmacists are working on it. The one point I'm missing in the presentation is there are regular supply chains, and sometimes in wars, of course, regular supply chains disappear. But what we're seeing now, and we're doing missions like yours from the Netherlands to hospitals, is that we seem to be not using the local supply chains. Actually, we had a very interesting little video during the council meeting in which the Ministry of Health, our Minister of Health, was saying, please buy Ukrainian medicine, that would help us because it helps the economy. So how do you mix external aid with supplying perhaps money to the local, the national?
Hello. Good morning. My name is Klaudiusz Gajewski, and as Mark told before, I'm one of the part of this campaign. So generally we are focused on the medicines which are not able to get on the Ukrainian market, and that products we have to get from the other country. Some of the products we are getting from Poland. Because Poland is a big country, so we have a lot of products, also generic, so the price is also very important, because we would like to get as a lot of products, not pay a lot of. So, but some of these products we have to ask for our colleagues from Germany, from Switzerland, as Mark suggests as well, because we don't also have a problem with this product in Poland. The shortage problem, it was yesterday on the panel, as I heard, with a professor from Canada, and this is a problem generally. So this centralization of the donation of the money and centralization of the process to buy the products, it is also very important from the shortage aspect. As a colleague from Pharmacists Without Borders told us a few minutes ago, that a lot of products goes to utilization, goes to destroy. So we are focused on to get the products which the hospital will request, and all of these products are very specific. It is albumins, it is injection, some other products, antibiotics regarding these microbiology problems. So this is the way how we can manage all of these things.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and thank you for a great session. I'd like to suggest to FIP the importance of emphasis to all pharmacists across the world, including, other general people, that it is unethical to donate expired medicines. It is unethical to donate leftover medicines. I think it is our role to please send that message around the world. And whether we send money or we send medicines or, we go to Ukraine or we go to Palestine, it doesn't matter. That the notion, the concept is to deliver usable, good quality medicines to those who need it. Thank you.
Yeah, Catherine?
So before our next question, I just want to say we'll be showing you a draft commitment to humanitarian response, which will be at the FIP booth after this session. And I would commend this to be added. Anything that you think like this can be added, and we can review that afterwards. If FIP is the federation with a vision for access to safe, quality, affordable medicines for all, this point is so well made.
Yes. Okay, we can have one more question, and then I think, Catherine, you would like to share another message before we leave.
Good morning, Tim Rendell from the United Kingdom. There's some really powerful themes coming through from his presentations this morning, and I heard a lot about shoulder to shoulder, not reinventing the wheel, and working in real partnership and collaboration. With a mixture of public and private businesses across the world to achieve many of these aims, what advice would the panel give to bring particularly private businesses together to really collaborate to achieve many of the goals that you've talked about this morning?
Okay. Who would like to answer?
So perhaps I've oversimplified it, but we have somebody in the office in the UK who's phoning community pharmacies, so private businesses, inviting them to put posters in their windows. And the theme that we're developing, which is a very successful theme, is that pharmacists during the COVID crisis were expected to do things in healthcare that they previously weren't doing because they were different healthcare professionals during COVID. The responsibilities were far greater because, as we know, the doctors ran away. The way we see it, with getting involved in a humanitarian situation like this, even though it is as easy as putting a poster in the window, continues that continuum of pharmacists demonstrating to the public, getting involved with the public, on a matter that clearly is very, very important to them as well. And that's hugely beneficial. So that's the message that we speak to when we speak to pharmacy businesses. It's a no-brainer that they will be putting these posters up in their windows when they get that message. All they need to understand is a little bit about how the scheme works, because they might get asked inside the pharmacy as to what the scheme is all about. But we've received no objections at all when we speak to business owners about this. They see this as being nothing than a beneficial development and the further advance of the reputation of pharmacy and sharpening its credentials.
Thank you. We have one more question over there. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Jorge Robledo from Argentina. I wish know how continue this activity from Ukraine actually.
Yes.
So from an FIP perspective, I think we look forward to receiving some of the learnings from this scheme and making sure that this scheme is supported, but then, Ian, to use your word, adopting and adapting for other situations. I think the whole thing about the pandemic, crises aside, is that we cannot lose what we learnt. We cannot go back when we have made progress. And for a scheme like this, if we go back and start from the beginning, it is, to use a phrase, unethical. It is a waste of all the resources that have been developed. So Mark challenged FIP to take this forward, and we will do you proud. We will take this forward and make sure we support all countries to do this kind of initiative. Does that help?
And maybe just slightly different, and maybe Lars was about to talk about it anyways. This afternoon at 2 o'clock, we have a joint session on the finding humanitarian face of pharmacy, and there's going to be more information about the pandemic and also what we did in Ukraine. So again, you're very welcome to join us this afternoon to discuss that.
And that is in room Paris. So, yeah. Catherine?
What I want to emphasise is that nothing we do is new. It always builds on what has gone before, because much of this work started somewhere previously. I wanted to just update you on the booze schedules for today. And may I commend all of you, as you get your coffee in a few minutes, to attend the Fit booth, where we have got a stand for this work. And we'd like you to sign up if that's possible, if you feel it, and also if you'd like to commit to it. These are some of the programs that we have at the booth today and, today and tomorrow. And additionally, I wanted to mention, building on all the great work that we have done for years, led by our MEPS colleagues, building this work into it, embedding this work into it, in solidarity, to use the word of our president, in trust, we will act. And we seek to commit and combat AMR here, and that we seek to commit and combat humanitarian crises. We wish to support all our organisations to take on board the learnings that we've seen here today, to adapt it to your crisis locally, and see how we can help you with this. I think it gets pharmacy on the map, and it uses the resources that we have already. So please visit the Fit booth, and please visit the stand at the Fit booth, which has all of the information there. Additionally, go to session B8 this afternoon at 2 p.m. in the Paris room. Have I got that? I mentioned the AMR commitment, Mark, because you spoke about antimicrobials, antibiotics, being a real issue in areas of crisis. And we have a session later today and a commitment launched there as well. We will make sure that contains some of this learning, and the humanitarian support contains that learning. I think that's it from me, Lars.
That brings to a close this morning's session. I think you'll agree with me that it's been an excellent morning's discussion. I would like to thank all of our presenters and ask you to join with me in thanking them. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.